Hello, everyone, and welcome, and a very happy Christmas Eve from all of us on the Christmas Universe, especially from me, as I bring you a Christmas Eve episode of the Christmas Universe. And this Christmas Eve, we're going to have the chance to. I'm sure, quite a lot of Wham fans, especially if you're a George Michael fan, you would have seen this documentary when it went out on the telly, or you've been watching it on BBC iPlayer, as they've been. It's probably getting a lot of streams right now. It's probably. I wouldn't be surprised to think that it's going to become a very popular Christmas documentary for years to come. And I'm starting to believe it's heading in that direction because of just how special this documentary really is. Essentially the documentary I'm referring to in regards to Wham and George Michael is essentially the BBC, or I guess you could say it was partially more of Sony Music who were responsible for this documentary, have put together a very lovely documentary where they've invited one of the former band members, Andrew Ridley, as you can see in an old photo here of him and George. In fact, he has a very unique Greek name as well, but I can't even remember it, so we're going to refer him as George Michael. But yes, Andrew Ridley manages to meet up with some of his friends who were actually cast members of the music video from 1984, which is it's crazy to think that they were responsible for a lot of like I said, they were responsible for a lot of moments in that music video, and they got to hang out with many old friends. Some of them are obviously getting on more than others, considering it has been quite a long time since they've had a proper get together at Christmas, and obviously you can tell it's very emotional for them, considering it's George Michael's not with them due to circumstances that obviously they were unable to control. They kind of like to believe that George Michael was there in spirit terms. I'm sure he was there in terms of the spirit. But yes, so we are going to refer to Wham! Last Christmas Unwrapped, this beautifully put together documentary celebrating 40 years of Wham! Last Christmas. This incredible Christmas song that achieved Christmas #1 last Christmas, and is probably on the verge of it may have already, by the time of this recording, may have already achieved Christmas #1 for this year, making probably or have already made history by the time this review goes out, being the only song ever to have achieved back-to-back Christmas #1, which I know it's kind of that's going to be one of those rare achievements for some time where a group or a singer achieves a back-to-back #1 with the same song as well, which is something that I'm sure even Queen wanted to happen years ago but never achieved it. So it's quite a history-making moment for them should they have achieved this glory, which obviously I'm sure we'll have found out by this episode's release if they have achieved that glory, because that would be really incredible celebration for Wham! Should they have achieved. But honestly, though, the song still lives on despite the it's going to obviously always be remembered as a Christmas #1 and a song that took the longest journey to get there, essentially. So let's begin. Let's begin on this look back at this documentary, shall we? And I guess you could say obviously the documentary also tells the story of how, I guess, Shirley Kemp is Martin Kemp's wife, Mr. Spandau Ballet himself, well, one of the band. He was kind of the guitarist of the band at the time. His wife Shirley was actually a good friend of George Michael's when he was coming into the music. Obviously, when he was getting started with Andrew and building, she was one. I guess you could say she was one of the dancers, along with Pepsi, who was another good friend of theirs, who they met when they were building Wham. But it's quite a fascinating story, hearing how Shirley, obviously considering the fact that mainly Andrew, George, and Shirley kind of all met in the same school in a way, pretty much they were in the same school. They all knew each other and then obviously Pepsi comes along and then makes this even though I mean, let's to put a disclaimer here. Shirley and Pepsi weren't necessarily singers; they were more the dance act of the group. If that makes any sense. I mean, if you look at the Top of the Pops clips that are out there showing them dancing with George and Andrew, they're kind of more of the dance act. And yeah, they might have a few singing parts here and there, but they're mostly there to dance with George or Andrew when they need when they're trying to do dance routines in their performances on Top of the Pops. But also, they were there to also help their friends out at the same time, which is what is there not to love to be able to help your friend become successful at something, which is a big win, isn't it? But yeah, it does. Yeah, this documentary does kind of tell gives you a sort of an insight of how Andrew and George met, and that George had this whole Greek name originally before he was named George Michael, which I can't even pronounce the name because it's a very, very Greek name. Yeah, I'll be amazed I'm sure most people could pronounce it, but I can't, so I'm not going to say it. But nevertheless, it was quite fascinating hearing how Wham got started. Really, like I said, it's quite a unique story how Wham comes into play, and how Shirley and Pepsi get involved, and they become they were even involved in some of the early Wham music videos. You'll probably have noticed, if you've watched any of the past Wham music videos, you might have noticed them with George and Andrew during dance routine performances of the music videos. But for the most part, it was mostly George. But I mean, the attention was kind of more on George and Andrew because they were the ones who made Wham what it is. But yeah, it was quite fascinating to hear how they kind of got started, and then it eventually gets to the part where we're obviously more interested in, and that is the whole how did Last Christmas come about? And surprisingly, it was quite as, I guess you could say, it was all George Michael's idea. Funny enough, he kind of had this, I guess you could say it was one of the nights when he and Andrew were just hanging out. He decided to sort of create something on a, kind of record it, like his part of his vocals and using like I guess one of those electric keyboards at the time. And he kind of created a demo and said, "Hey, Andrew, you haven't listened to this." And he came up with the melody. He came up, I guess you could say, the back vocals and the melody that kind of set the tone for the birth of Last Christmas. The song still lives, still is a timeless classic, and it's amazing to think that George Michael he kind of had all the input was on him. It wasn't an Andrew Ridley thing. Andrew Ridley didn't have any input. It was mostly George Michael saying, "Look, this is how I want the song to be. This is how the melody I want it, and this is the sort of vocals I'm looking for." He kind of knew what he wanted out of this Christmas song. So you could, in theory, say that it was more of a George Michael thing than a Wham thing, but he kind of put the Wham title because he was in the group, so it would be wrong not to include Andrew somewhere, even though the vocals was mostly George Michael. But it would be interesting though to see what it would have been like if they were both singing on the song. Would it sound different? Would it be still popular today? I'll be intrigued to see what that version of Last Christmas would have sounded like, but obviously we'll never ever know. So yes, so of course it kind of tells the story of how George Michael was responsible for the introduction, for building the going to the recording studio, making the track. Once that was all done, and kind of once he got everything he needed to make it work, they would start planning a music video, and he had picture card idea going to a wintry scene, sort of like a wintry location for a music video, and that's what led to them using Sanfi in Switzerland, which was the location of the music video, and obviously because they had loads of wintry mountains, and also it just so happened to have been snowing there at the time, and it actually still snows there to this very day, funny enough. I don't know if they get as much snow as they do back then, but they had snow. That's the main thing, and it was because of that it's what led to George Michael and bringing all his friends along to help build the music video. And trust me, many of the people that George Michael Michael brought along for this music video are genuine friends. These are literally people that George and Andrew, hang out with from time to time, brought them to this trip and created like a sort of a Christmas getaway, sort of showing that on a music video, which was quite, and it's also very interesting because obviously you'll notice there wasn't any singing involved in the music video because this was one of those, again, one of those early previews of you could make a story out of a music video, sort of music videos that I guess that is mostly more common now than it is, I guess you could say, back then. But it's it was a really nice story to it, and it kind of, and then they also managed to invite a model to play the woman who broke George Michael's heart in the music video, and kind of built like this sort of love triangle storyline. And I'm sure most of you already get the gist of that storyline for Last Christmas. It was quite fascinating to hear that they invited a model to play that part. So that was and she became a part of that crew, even though she felt like she wasn't really fitting in. She kind of did fit in some. But yeah, it was very fascinating to hear and also this documentary shows some of the outtakes where Andrew trips over when trying to get onto the motormobile, the thing that pulls you up to the mountains. I think I got it right there, the motormobile, and where he trips over accidentally, and he tripped over there in 1984 when they were filming the music video. George couldn't stop laughing about that. They showed that bit from the outtakes, but yeah, they had quite a few outtakes in this documentary, which gives you a taste of what it was like when they were filming, and some of the cool outtakes music video, which was amazing. But yes, despite filming of the music video Last Christmas, there was also a downside to it, and that was that, well, it wasn't so long after George came back from that trip, he gets a call from Sir Bob Geldof to do a song for Ethiopia, which you can imagine how you can obviously imagine it was pretty much of a damper for George Michael, especially considering he put a lot of effort on that song Last Christmas, only to find out this charity single, AK Band-Aid, dominate the charts because of Bob Geldof's messaging to wanting to support Ethiopia. I mean, to be fair, the Ethiopia reports kind of struck a nerve on Bob so much that he had to create this band as soon as possible to make sure that he could raise as much money as needed to be able to help all those families and kids and stuff who were suffering. Give him props, he pulled it off, but it's also a bit of a damper for George Michael, because you could imagine how special it would have for him to get that #1 on a very successful year for Wham, only to be slipped away from because of charity. but again, charity's a good thing. He and Andrew kind of sat down and decided, they're going to donate the sales of Wham Last Christmas to Ethiopia, the royalties to Ethiopia, which was considering they knew they were going to be #2 that year. And it was, they kind of accepted it pretty well, even though it was still heartbreaking for George because he wanted this song to be #1 that year. You knew it was going to be, I think a lot of people kind of believed it was going to be Wham's year until that whole Band-Aid thing came out of nowhere and just dominated the charts that Christmas. But of course, from there on, it would eventually talk about Wham having their last ever live tour, which eventually talks about the fact and then Andrew kind of talks about after their sort of live tour and after they did their split up thing, that George would become the success story that he did. And funny enough, he even hosted small, I guess you could say, some form of Christmas gathering when he was alive. He actually went out of his way to put up a Christmas tree. He even got some Christmas presents for his friend. We got to see a bit of his home video, which actually shows him in a jet, especially George Michael in a jet, giving presents to his friends, most likely Pepsi and Shirley, who he happened to meet up during the Christmases a few years ago. And it was really lovely to see that he went out of his way to the friends together when he could during his busy schedules and stuff. And I love that he went out of his way to do that. And then also this documentary does talk about towards like Shirley Camp, etc., about the effects of George Michael's death and how sad how they struggled to love Christmas after George George's passing, but they did like the brave thing of wanting to keep the enjoyment going even when he's not there. And you could definitely feel the struggle they had, especially Shirley Camp, knowing that she had to struggle without having her best friend there in front, to want to meet up over Christmas, etc., and especially Andrew Ridley trying to cope without his without his friend, his former band member, being able to hang out with him over Christmas when he was free, etc. And it really took a toll on their friends quite a bit, but they tried to remain strong throughout it, and I love how they were very determined to keep that Christmas love going despite the sadness of him dying on Christmas Day in 2016. Very, very hard day, I'm sure, for a lot of George Michael fans, and I'm sure many of his friends like Shirley and Pepsi and Andrew having to deal with that loss at the time was very difficult. But then, of course, it leads to the finale part of the documentary where they talk about the popularity of Last Christmas around that time, where people were trying to do lots of like TikTok videos and stuff, like trying to promote Last Christmas so much to the point that they would start a campaign to get Last Christmas to Christmas #1, and it leads us all the way to last Christmas, where Christmas 2023, where in December, just before Christmas, they would achieve Christmas #1 of 2023. Where after 39 years, Wham! Last Christmas achieved that goal, and it was because of us, the fans of George Michael and the people who have been wanting this song to achieve Christmas #1 for so long, sat down and said, this song deserves it. We did exactly that. We showed Andrew, we showed the world that our voices are powerful enough to make a song a Christmas classic, a Christmas #1, and it just goes to show how powerful our voice, how vocal we were to this make this reality of it finally achieving Christmas #1 39 years to its original release. And with and now that it's on its 40th anniversary, I mean, imagine how it would have felt now for George Michael, knowing that he was #1 2 years in a row, the same song. That would have felt like a dream like a surreal moment for him. I could imagine how he would have reacted to knowing that he was going to have a back-to-back Christmas #1 with the same song 2 years in a row. That would have been a huge deal if he was around. I'm sure it would be a massive deal for him, and especially for Andrew and all his friends who have worked on the music video, etc. Would have blown him away, knowing that we supported him that much to make him a 2-time Christmas #1 winner. That's a huge deal for George, even though he did get #1 thanks to Band-Aid, but that was more partial #1, considering it was more Bob Geldof's #1 dream rather than George Michael, who actually got his own solo Christmas #1 thanks to Last Christmas. But yeah, what a treat. Honestly, it was a very lovely, and it was really lovely to see them like in San Fitzy reuniting and looking and going into the house, seeing the house which you can notice that the trees in that area have grown since 1984, and obviously you can't, and it's blocked the house a little. Yeah, it's really lovely to see them go back to that location like nearly 40 years later. Crazy, isn't it, to think that it's been 40 years since that music video was made, and they had that Winter Wonderland style music video. Incredible, isn't it? But there you go. So that is what Wham! Last Christmas Unwrapped. You can watch the whole thing on BBC iPlayer if you want to see it. And they think they've also got Wham! At the BBC as well. You can watch, and they also got the film Last Christmas. If you haven't seen that, that's on iPlayer. But yeah, they've also got George Michael live in London as well. If you want to see one of his past live performances, that I believe it's one of his DVDs from the past where they recorded the whole thing from him in London. If you want to see his live performance they did in London a few years ago when he was around. But yeah, it's really lovely, really, really lovely stuff, and really incredible documentary. And I'm sure this is going to be a documentary that I'm sure a lot of people are going to be watching all Christmas. It's probably going to become a very popular watch over the Christmas season, especially if Wham! Definitely achieves another Christmas #1. It's bound to be on top of the BBC iPlayer's most watched documentary program list for Christmas. But then again, Gavin and Stacey is probably going to beat it. tomorrow with Christmas Day, of course, because Gavin and Stacey's finale is going to be a big deal. Anyway, so yeah, and also if you want to get your hands on the 40th anniversary Last Christmas CD, there'll be links to get merch. From Amazon, they've got merch out there for Wham. If you want to continue supporting the song and make it #1 at the end of the year, go ahead, do what you need to do. If you want to support this song all the way to Friday the 27th, which is the final, where they're going to announce the final #1 of 2024. And if you think Wham deserves it, by all means. But yeah, honestly, Wham Last Christmas will live on for years and years to come, and I'm sure a lot of us are going to talk about this song for many more years to come. And I'm sure I'm hoping that many more Christmas songs will achieve Christmas #1 down the road. The likes of maybe Elton John Stepping Into Christmas might achieve it down the road. Maybe Mariah Carey's All I Want for Christmas could achieve that #1 spot eventually. I would love to see the Post Fairy Tales of New York achieve it soon as well. Please let that be a thing in the future, hopefully. Hopefully that dream will come reality. And I would love to see Sam Ryder get that #1. Even though he missed out on the #1 last year, I think in a few years, I think he should get one. And yeah, I would love to also see. Yeah, I guess it'd be nice to see. Leona Lewis already had #1, but there's a couple of Christmas songs that I think get one eventually. But anyway, thanks for watching, and I will catch you all on a very special review on Christmas Day, where we're going to be taking a look at Gavin and Stacey, the finale following its broadcast. I can't wait to review that on Christmas Day, so be sure to look out for our Christmas special on the big day itself, finally sharing the emotion of the Gavin and Stacey finale. And then we've got the Boxing Day review, looking at the outnumbered Christmas special this year. A few more specials to go, and it'll be the end of our Christmas Universe fun for 2024. Happy Christmas Eve, everyone, and we'll see you all on the big day. See you then.